Well, growing up isn't easy, never has been, but today's young people are faced with challenges unimaginable for generations past. That's why Maclean's and Newsweek seized on the phrase "Generation Screwed." Paying off student debt, buying a house, getting a job. Are all these things becoming out of reach? Tonight, The Bottom Line tries for answers. Patty Croft is a former senior bank executive. Jim Stanford is an economist with Unifor. Preet Banerjee is a freelance financial writer and broadcaster. And Amanda Lang is our senior business correspondent. Their thoughts in a moment, but first, some brief background. Well, they say figures don't lie, so try these on for size. 42% of young adults aged 20 to 29 are living with their parents. That's 1/3 more than a generation ago. Young people are waiting longer to get married. 29 for women, 31 for men, the highest averages ever. Women, on average, are waiting until they're 30 before having their first child. Why this failure to launch, as it's being called? The simple answer is jobs, jobs, jobs. Look at these depressing stats. The unemployment rate for Canadians 15 to 24 was 11% in the summer of 2008, 16.4% a year later, 14.1% at the end of last year. That's a lot of kids with no jobs, many with significant student debt. Stats Canada pegs average student debt at close to $20,000. All this leads to lots of questions.
My biggest economic concern would be paying back my student loans.
Getting a job in the first place is daunting.
Are many young people caught in a trap today where an intense and expensive education guarantees nothing? Will they ever pay off their student debt? Is home ownership rapidly becoming a thing of the past? Are marriage and family simply out of reach? Sounds over the top, but for many young people, it's the bottom line. Good questions, time for some answers. All right, well, let's start with, it's a very depressing look at the picture. Is it as bad as that? Is it worse than it used to be, say, 30 years ago, Amanda?
No question, the numbers bear it out. You saw the unemployment numbers. And if you just think about it for a moment, it's perfectly logical, because if the same number of jobs exist, what we know is people aren't retiring. They used to retire at 55. Now 65 is young, and people can't afford to leave. So you just picture the workforce. New jobs are created, but those people are occupying positions that would have been freed up for younger workers. It could be only for a period of time, but it's no question, if you're graduating from university today, it looks bleak.
Jim?
And the unemployment number per se is just the tip of the iceberg, Peter. That doesn't count all the students who've gone back to school because they couldn't find a job out there. When you go back to school, you disappear from the unemployment data. So I actually think the labor market situation is worse than that. It's not just a shortage of jobs for young people, it's also the deterioration in the quality of jobs. We know that we've experienced this social change in Canada over the last 20 or 30 years, kind of the hollowing out of the middle class, the disappearance of good jobs. It's young people who experience that most direct. They're like the shock troops of that change. You know, some of us managed to hang on to a decent job, but anyone who's getting hired in behind us, they're being told to work for less, take a contract, precarious work. So it's both the quantity and the quality of jobs that's the problem for young people.
All right, let's try and break it down in some of the key decisions that young people have to make. And I guess the first one coming out of high school is, should I go to university? What's the number one thing, Patty, they should consider making that decision?
I think they need to ask, is university right for me, Peter? Because I think for a long time, the expectation was you go to university because you're going to land a better job as a result, but it's so dependent on your field of study. I know so many young people who go to university and get a degree in history or philosophy, there's no job, so then they have to go to community college, more debt, delayed getting into the labor market. So I think we have to do a lot better job on educating people in high school as to the options out there, and a great example is trades. I've got a stepson that's a welder, my son is an apprenticeship carpenter, and there the job prospects are very bright.
You know, one of the things, the last time we touched on this issue on Bottom Line, the criticism we got from young people is, I'm not hearing my voice in there. So we fixed that this time. And Preet, you're the first one to test it, because we got some questions from young people. So you get this question right now.
Hi, my name is Lily Shattuck. I study art history. My question would be, how would you pay off your student loan in a reasonable amount of time while you are, managing your first job?
All right, well, that's a lot already. She's got a job, at least, or at least that's what she's thinking, how to manage the student loan. What's the answer?
Well, I think it's the same approach you would take at any point in your life. If it was your second job or third job, you need a plan. And what I would say, if there's one thing that separates people who are really good with managing money and those who are really bad, is how they handle credit responsibly. So I would suggest there's two things they need to do. One is they need a net worth statement, assets minus liabilities, to see where they are. When they finish school, they're probably in a negative net worth position, but that's okay as long as they're moving positively. And the second thing they need is they need a budget. So you can't procrastinate with that. At every point in your life, you're going to need a budget, and it's more important when you're young because this sets the tone for the rest of your life with your relationship with respect to money. So you need that budget. You need to run a surplus. And if you think it's too hard and you can't afford the things that you want to buy, it's because you can't afford the things you want to buy.
All right, let's deal with the people who are in a tougher position, who've, got the student loan, they owe a bunch of money, they've got a timetable where they've got to start paying back, but they don't have a job. What do they do, Jim?
Well, that's where they need the third thing on Preet's list, which is a couch in their parents' basement. Because let's face it, if you haven't got a job and you graduate with debt, what are your chances? That's where you just got to kind of pull together and rely on the love and solidarity of your family and keep your hopes up. The thing I hate is the finger pointing that often goes on. It's a terrible thing to be unemployed, especially because our young people are more trained, more educated, more skilled than any generation in our history. Yet they'll still get blamed while you picked the wrong subject. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that didn't matter. You still had the chance at a career path. So I think we have to recognize that being young and unemployed is a very hard thing. Give them some social supports, including from the family, but also from our society.
Patty, what's the answer?
And I think an unpaid internship, I'm not in favor of them in general, but I think they may have some benefits, but I think you have to be careful. I think you have to know, for example, whether the organization has a track record of actually offering full-time employment to people who get those unpaid internships, and know what the job description is. Don't go in there and be someone's personal assistant. That's not going to work for you. So I think that's one part. The other part, Peter, is very old-fashioned, and that is I'm a big fan of networking. I would urge young people, talk to your mom and dad's friends, to your aunts and uncle, talk to anybody and everybody, because that's the way the world still works. I think it always has been, but I think it's even more important today.
You almost have to be a pest
Yes,
when you're in that kind of a situation. But on the point of
as you can.
On that point of paying off the student loan when you don't have a job.
Well, I hate to be the bad cop at the table here, but a senior bank economist said to me the single biggest problem with our economy is all the parents that don't kick their kids out of the basement. Don't let your kids sleep on the couch. It's a little tough love, but you know what we've done is give them the idea that they're going to get the easy ride we got. They're not. That's just a fact. So if you have debt, get a job. We know there are jobs. They may not be the job you want. It may not be the job you were trained for. That's not ideal. We get that. But you can get a job. We know that there's skills gap and there's unemployment, high unemployment in jobs people just don't want to do. So if you have debt, you can get work, and that's what you need to do. It's what your great-grandparents did. These kids need to think that way too.
There are some jobs, but there are not enough jobs. That's not in debate. So you can give someone advice. Say, go out and network. I agree, that's good advice. Improve your resume. Apply for any job that you see. But that doesn't change the fact that someone is still going to be left without work. That's where, again, focusing on the individual and their characteristics, I think, is a bit misplaced.
I think I have to give some practical advice here. So one thing that we have to talk about is the repayment assistance plan, the RAP. So if you show that there's financial hardship, then they may reduce your payments required or eliminate them temporarily until you get on your feet. And if you don't do that and you just say, well, I have no money, I'm not going to make my loan repayment, that affects your credit score. So down the road, when you want to borrow more money, the interest rate could be higher, you might be denied that loan. So access that repayment assistance plan.
Make sure you know what your options are on that front. Okay, here's another question. Watch this.
Hello, my name is Peter Simon, and I am an art student. My question to the panel is it reasonable for a person of my generation to ever expect to own a home?
It makes you cry to even hear the question coming. Is it reasonable?
It is sad, Peter, but if we look right now, the average age of a first-time home buyer in Canada is 29, so that gentleman looks a little bit younger, so maybe he's got a few years ahead. But if they're graduating with $20,000 in debt, they got to pay that down first. They got a weak labor market, and housing affordability is a huge issue. So I think they will be able to afford something, but my advice there is think small, start small. My first house in North Toronto was 900 square feet with an old kitchen and an old bathroom, and that was fine because I then fixed it up and traded it up. But it's about expectations. So in answer to the question, yes, we'll be able to buy a house, but think small at least to start
And
with.
that house now is worth $600,000. Preet, your advice on that one?
Yeah, I would say if you're 5 years out of being a graduate, don't worry. You're not alone. You can be in your mid-30s and it's okay. There's two things I would say you need to look at is, one, are you realistically going to be in that house for 10 years? If not, don't even put it on your radar. Secondly, do the budgeting. See what the mortgage, the property taxes, the maintenance would be. And if you don't think there's a big enough buffer after those payments so that you could put part of that away into savings, you shouldn't be considering affordability for a house because you can't afford the house yet.
All right, next question. Watch this one. Here it is.
Hi, my name is Olivia Croxall. I'm majoring at Dalhousie University in Biology Sciences. And my question for the panel is, should I be worried about saving retirement money at my age?
There you go, Jim. That one's for you.
Same advice that Preet just gave about the house. You know, give yourself a break, give yourself some time, especially if you finish school, pay off your debt. First of all, that is savings. Actually, mathematically, paying off a debt is a form of savings. And you'll never probably not make as much money on investments as you're being charged on interest on most of your debt. So pay off your debt first, start to build up a family or a household, some stability, then you can start worrying about your retirement.
All right. I want to show you something here, but just before I do, I've got to explain it because not everybody knows what social media memes are, but they're very popular, especially with young people. They're kind of biting commentaries on any number of different subjects. Some are funny, but some, you know, there's usually a hard message in all of them. These ones are from Old Economy Steve, and that's basically putting words in this guy's mouth. It kind of looks like a high school picture, my high school grad picture, and that's what it's supposed to be, Old Economy Steve. So watch the kind of things that are being said on these memes. When I was in college, my summer job paid the tuition. Tuition was $400 then. Here's the next one. Watch this. And this really does cut to exactly what we're talking about here. Graduates college, doesn't move back in with parents like, you know, a lot of kids are having to do now after graduation. And the final one, has it better than his parents and his kids. What's the message, not from those, but generally with the topic we're talking about, for parents? How can parents help in this?
I think a reality check. The reality is that when a lot of us, this generation around this table, graduated, we were lucky. We were in a prosperous era, and if you didn't mess up, you would get wealthier. You would get a job, probably in your field, and your income would go up. It's not true for kids who are 18 today. It just isn't. Now, that may change. Economies are organic, and we may actually innovate our way to a more productive economy, and everything will be fine. But I suspect that for a period of time, these kids are going to have it tough. So the message I would give to my kids are, I'm sorry to say it, but you're not going to have the same easy ride. It's going to feel different. You're going to have to make different choices and maybe do with less. And we don't do them any favors by letting them think that all of the stuff that we've enjoyed is just their due. It isn't their due. As I say, they got to think like their grandparents because that's a little bit closer to the economy they're going to live in.
I'm not sure we're framing this correctly, though. I think we're framing it from our point of view, where our context of well-off meant you went to school, you got a good job, you got married, you bought a house, and so on. But when I talk to the younger people, a lot of them talk about the importance of fulfilling work, about having work-life balance, about being able to travel and meet interesting people and take advantage of technology. So I think we have to be really careful about framing well off because their definition could be very different from ours.
Preet?
Well, I don't know what to say about that one. I think they just have to accept, we have to accept that this next generation just has it tougher than previous generations have, and that's just the way it is. And I think the people that do have jobs, they can think about those things, but there are so many people that don't have those jobs, and it's a big issue. We need to tackle it. We can't just say, well, this is what I think it is, but we have to do something about it, because if we deny our young workers to have income, then if you take a look at retirees in the future, essentially what they're doing is they're selling investment assets to the next generation of retirees. So if they're selling it to convert to cash to sustain their lifestyle, and the next generation has fewer jobs and less income, then there's a bit of a supply and demand headwind on stock market returns. So it's important not just for young Canadians, but for all Canadians.
All right, I got to take a break. Jim, you'll be first up when we come out of the break. When we do come back, we ask the panelists for their #1 tip for a generation looking for constructive advice. And welcome back to The Bottom Line. Patty, Jim, Preet, and Amanda are all here at the table tonight. On to the next question. As a society and with the big picture in mind, how do we tackle this issue of a generation that feels the odds are stacked against it? Jim?
Well, I think it's very important to put the question to society, not to the individual. I mean, the practical advice, do a resume network, apply for every job, fine. But the reality that young people are going to be worse off than we were is not inevitable. It's only happening because there's no good jobs for them to get and grow into and have the same career path that we did. And that's the result of the way we are managing the economy. Corporations are driving down wages, governments are cutting income supports, and good jobs are being outsourced around the world. So socially, for the individual who's looking for the job, go for it. But at the same time, stand up and demand something. Be like the Quebec students or the Occupy protest and something and say, there's no economic reason why the next generation has to be worse off. There's no economic rationale for that. And say that you're not going to take it. That's my advice.
Idle no more for students.
There you go.
Patty, you'll be joining that.
Yeah, I will be. I'm not so sure they are that bad off. I think that we have to be careful again with the doom and gloom because, for example, if we look in technology, the founders of Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, those are young people who have found very good jobs. But back to your point about what do we need to do as society at large, I think goes back to my point about the trades. We've got to do a better job of having a much more structured approach to the trades. In Germany, the youth unemployment rate is 8%. In neighboring Spain, it's 50%. What does Germany do? They have a fantastic program in high school where companies get tax credits to take these kids out of school into apprenticeship programs while they're studying. So when they graduate high school, they go right into the labor force as productive workers. So I think we really need to do a lot better job in Canada in terms of the trades.
All right, I've got 2 minutes left, so it's one thought from each of you. A student walks in here, they want your #1 tip on what they should do. Amanda.
Well, I would say stay confident, first of all, because increasingly employers get that skills are important, but you can teach skills. Aptitude, the qualities only you bring matter. And you can actually develop your aptitudes in any number of jobs. You can actually get the training you need to be a manager one day as a retail clerk. It's what you bring to it that matters. So stay positive and actually keep your mind open to possibilities. It does matter that we learn how to think innovatively and be more productive. Those are the jobs of the future. I think they're coming.
Preet.
Yeah, I like Patty's suggestion of networking. I think there's a fine balance between a bit too eager, but I think there are a lot of people who want to help other people. I think a lot of jobs are not advertised. So I think if you can identify someone who's doing something that you would like to do, engage them meaningfully, make the investment, take them out for lunch, and if they think that you have the drive and initiative, they may open doors for you that would not have otherwise been opened.
Jim.
Well, do what you have to do to survive, rely on your friends, your family, but demand something from society as well. If you end up in a crappy job, stand up from your boss and say, treat me fairly, because I got more skills than any generation that came before me.
Well, some will take a crappy job.
They will take a crappy job, yeah, and they will, and they should get the most out of it.
All right. You get the final word, Penny.
I think you have to be mobile. The unemployment rate in Saskatchewan is 3.6%. In Alberta, it's 4.4%. Do your homework. Do not become a teacher, a baker, or a butcher. Become something in healthcare. Become something in mining, engineering, social workers. So do your research where the jobs are.
You just alienated all the bakers and the butchers.
Well, they can stay there, but there's not a lot of future growth.
They're going to put out a meme about you.
Yes, that's right. Thank you all.
Thank
Good
you.
advice, with the possible exception of that last one. Thank you. And thanks to you as well, and especially to those young people who helped us focus down some of these questions tonight. You may have some more thoughts, and we're always interested in hearing them at cbcnews.ca/thenational.